Good afternoon, everyone. Anybody want to trade? No? Okay. I keep offering and never get any acceptances. Basically, what we're going to do here first is to fire the artillery piece. It is known as a 10-pound Parrott rifle gun, and that doesn't mean it weighs 10 pounds. That means that is the weight of the projectile that it shoots downrange. After we fire the first round, I'll come back, talk to you a little about the different types of projectiles and different types of artillery that was used commonly during the time of the Civil War, as well as the individual positions that, whether you were Confederate or Northern, and their jobs around the gun in order to make it fire on a regular basis. And again, thank you very much, and we will proceed right away. Thank you. Chief, it's all yours.
Cannoneers, post! Commence firing! Case shot 850 yards. Load! Ready! Fire!
Whoa.
Cease fire!
Talking about the gun crew for this 10-pound Parrott, and the number one man has a sponge rammer. The sponge end, the number one man will dip in water. He will run it down the barrel, and the purpose of that is to make sure that there are no burning embers left inside the barrel. And then the number two man will take the ammunition from the number 5 man, and he will put the ammunition down the barrel, and the number 1 man will take the other end of the rammer and he will ram it down the barrel, while number 3 man is covering the torch hole at the breech end of the cannon. And then he will also turn back and go to the gun commander and see if the gun commander needs to have the gun swiveled in either direction. If not, then the gun commander will give the touchdown signal and everything is all right. And then number 3 man will come up, and when the gun commander gives a ready, he will take a prick down the torch hole, break open a bag of powder, step outside the wheel, while number 4 man will come in with the primer, stick it down the hole, and then he will pull out and make the rope kind of like a tight rope, and then he'll wait for the command to fire, and then when the command fire is given, then he will tug the lanyard and hopefully the cannon will go off. What we're looking at here is a 10-pound Parrott. It can fire either solid shot, case shot, or canister, and the range is about a mile.
Well, this type of gun here could fire, was a rifled weapon. It could fire rounds that were designed to, they had devices affixed to the rear of the shell that when the explosion of the powder went off, the devices at the rear of the shell would conform to the rifling and go out in a spiral motion like throwing a football. And actually you had 3 types. You had a solid shot that you would fire out of here, sometimes referred to as a bolt. You could use it against a bridge, a building. You could fire it at the opposing gun to destroy the gun or limber. You had a case shot where it was set up to almost like a shotgun shell would explode over the troops, depending on how accurately the fuse was set and burned, and also just an ordnance type of shell that was strictly explosive. Also, as a last-ditch effort, you could fire a canister round, which was a equivalent of a shotgun shell on the scale of this gun, and it could damage the rifling in the barrel, but it was a last-ditch effort to defend the cannon against incoming infantry or cavalry.
Yeah, this is Rob Griesbach with the Confederate Military Forces at Monocacy doing artillery demonstrations. What we're going to look at is some of the different types of projectiles that were shot out of the artillery. The first projectile, what we would call, is a bolt or a solid piece of shell. So you would have a unit that looked like this if it was fired out of a rifled piece of artillery, and it was a solid piece of metal. If you had then another type of cannon that was smoothbore, it didn't have rifling, you'd have a round or a cannonball that would be fired out, and it would be then a solid piece of metal. The other thing that they had is what they called a case shot. A case shot would be a projectile that was filled with gunpowder and then lead or steel balls. And what would happen is this particular projectile would be shot out of the artillery piece. When it got in front of the troops, there was a fuse that would go off. So what the person in the artillery had to do is put the fuse on and then set a timer so it would go off at the proper distance to explode in front of the troops. The other type of artillery piece they had was called a shell, and a shell was just hollow and filled with gunpowder. So it once again had a fuse that had to be put on, and then the fuse was timed so it would go off in front of the troops and then break into a number of pieces. What we have here is a fuse, and this particular fuse then would have a hole in it, and you would then attach what we would call a paper fuse within this fuse adapter. Here's the paper fuse. And what it has is markings. As you can see, a 10-second marking on there. So what the artillery person would do is look and say, oh, the troops are 1,000 yards away, the fuse needs to be 11 seconds. So they would cut it at 11 seconds, put it into the fuse adapter, and then screw the fuse adapter into the artillery piece.
The procedure for loading one of these, a well-trained soldier in ideal conditions could get 3 rounds off in a minute. And the procedure for that would be, you have a cartridge box on your hip, a cap pouch on the front of your belt. Here's the cartridge box, cap pouch. And you would draw a paper cartridge from your cartridge box, tear with your teeth. You would pour it down the muzzle of the weapon. You would draw your ramrod. That's this down here on the underside. You would use that to ram home the powder and ball and return it. Otherwise, your weapon was useless. Then you would, after you return the rammer, you'd bring it up to your waist, you put the cap on the cone. It's a percussion cap, little copper tin hat with fulminate of mercury in it, and that was what ignited the charge to send the mini ball downrange. And that's pretty much, that's under ideal conditions. Under battle conditions, you have a lot of fouling, the powder build up, gets a little harder to ram the ball down, and it'd be a lot slower by then. And then there's a lot of times in the heat of battle you couldn't hear with all the noise if the weapons were actually going off. So there's guys that rammed several rounds down and didn't even know it, or put the ball down first without the powder. So a lot of confusion in the time of battle.
Hi, my name is Tracy Evans. I'm a park ranger here at Monocacy National Battlefield. You can find us on the web at www.nps.gov. And we also have a Facebook page if you want to follow us on Facebook. And we are here at the Monocacy National Battlefield Visitor Center on our 149th commemoration of the battle. And we are lucky to have 4 authors with us today signing some of their books, and I'm going to pass the mic on to the first of those.
Hello, I'm Scott Hipp. This is my first release, Old Line Divided, Maryland in the Civil War, Volume 1. Volume 2 will be out next year for the 150th anniversary of Monocacy. But in brief, it's a full Civil War narrative, and it also peppers in what happens in the important border state of Maryland. Maryland contributes soldiers to both sides, and unfortunately, they meet in battle in many of the famous battles that you hear, whether it's Gettysburg or Front Royal in the Shenandoah Valley. So it's interesting work, and it tells about Maryland and Maryland pride, and I will pass it on to a fellow Marylander, Mr. Toomey.
Hi, my name's Dan Toomey. I'm guest curator at the Baltimore Ohio Railroad Museum, and this is my latest book, The War Came by Train, the B&O Railroad During the Civil War. It goes with the exhibit I designed called The War Came by Train. It is the largest Civil War railroad exhibit ever created. The book is available at the B&O Railroad Museum and here at the gift shop at Monocacy. And now, Frank.
My name is Frank Cooling. I'm the author of a new book on the day that Lincoln was almost shot, the Fort Stevens story, which is a sequel to the Monocacy battle as part of Jubal Early's raid on Washington in July 1864, in which he tested the fortifications of Washington. It's all part of a trilogy that builds to next year's sesquicentennial of that moment when Abraham Lincoln was almost shot in battle, and how that would have changed the course of American history if that had happened. Capture of Washington by the Confederates in an election summer of 1864, elimination of Abraham Lincoln, and we might have had a different America if all of this had occurred. I'll pass the baton to Claudia Floyd.
My name is Claudia Floyd, and I am the author of Maryland Women in the Civil War. And this is a look at Maryland women's role in the Civil War in terms of their contributions. This includes women who are blockade runners, couriers, nurses, spies, propaganda writers, camp followers, seamstresses, etc., etc., even soldiers. There were some women who were soldiers during the Civil War, and we had several of those here in the state of Maryland. This is from their memoirs, their letters, and their diaries, primarily found in the Maryland Historical Society. So I'm trying to tell the story of Maryland women and have their voices heard in the dialogue on the war itself.